Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you for coming to today's webinar, Breaking the Waste Habit, Innovative Construction Solutions. My name is Twyla Neely-Strite, and I'm the Education and Operations Associate at Illinois Green Alliance. Today's program was put on by the Illinois Green Alliance Programs Committee, a volunteer group that coordinates education events that cover a wide range of topics throughout the year for the green building industry. The team that organized today's event consists of Chelsea Lamar, Helen Ho, and Pamela Brookstein. You've all been muted upon entry, so please type any questions you have into the Q&A function at the bottom, and we'll get them answered by our speakers at the end. This webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to you all in a follow-up email. For those who are unfamiliar, Illinois Green Alliance is a membership-driven nonprofit organization that advances green buildings and sustainable communities for all. Our 5-year strategic plan pushes the green building industry to meet or get on the path to net zero. We achieve this work through education events such as panels, building tours, and more, by engaging communities and partnering with organizations across Illinois, and by advocating for new policies and legislation. Members can view our recorded webinars in our on-demand webinar library and learn more about membership, see upcoming events, and get involved by visiting our website, illinoisgreenalliance.org. This webinar is approved through AIA for 1 LUHSW credit and can be logged for 1 LEED AP or Green Associate CE hour. Certificates of completion for both AIA members and non-AIA members are available upon request. To request AIA CE credit or a personalized certificate of completion for architecture license CE reporting purposes, follow the QR code on your screen, and I think we'll also put that in the chat for you. Now and then at the end of the webinar as well, and just complete our quick linked form. I'll also be linking it in the chat, so you'll see it in both places. For those interested in self-reporting CE hours for your LEED AP or LEED Green Associate credentials, we'll be sharing a self-reporting instruction and fillable certificate of completion in our follow-up email to all attendees next week through Eventbrite. Here are today's AIA learning objectives. I also want to take a quick moment to recognize Illinois Green Alliance's sustaining sponsors who make our work possible. A special thank you to our gold level sponsors, ComEd, USGBC, and Sloan. Make a commitment to advancing green buildings in communities across the state by visiting illinoisgreenalliance.org/sponsorship to start a conversation about sponsor partnership today. We have a great lineup of speakers for today's program. Lindsay Landwehr-Fasulis is Director of Sustainability at Turner Construction Company, an international construction services company and builder in diverse market segments. Named ENR's #1 green builder for 15 years running, Turner employs over 1,000 sustainability credentialed staff and works on over 500 green building projects each year. Lindsay has over 15 years of construction industry experience. At Turner, she has implemented company-wide programs focused on job site operations and material transparency, working towards a net zero future. John Millade is Director of Sustainable and Healthy Environments at White & Company, a leading design-led design build firm rooted in Chicagoland. He promotes high performance and wellness on projects of all types and sizes through his role as a Living Future accredited professional, Fitwell ambassador, and WELL faculty. John brings a holistic approach to an understanding of sustainability to White's team. He's recognized as a LEED fellow and supports industry initiatives as a member of the WELL Materials Concept Advisory, Green Build Advisory, and Illinois Green Alliance Board of Directors. Stuart Vanden Heuvel is a program manager leading up Ripley's Circular Cities initiative. This initiative entails launching 50 public reuse marketplaces in 50 cities by 2025. For the past 2 years, he's had the opportunity to speak with hundreds of businesses, organizations, and cities about reuse and has gained a firm understanding of the challenges around building a marketplace platform to serve as the infrastructure for the circular economy. After we hear from our speakers, we'll have an audience Q&A led by AIT Worldwide Logistics Vice President of Sustainability, Chelsea Lamar. Remember to add your questions to the Q&A function throughout the program so that Our speakers and Chelsea can address them at the end. And now I'm going to pass things over to Lindsay to get us started.
Hello, everybody. Do that. Share. All right. So glad you could be here today to talk trash with us. I want to get started with a little bit of level setting about why this is so important. So the EPA estimates that in 2018, the US generated about 600 million tons of waste. That's a really big number and somewhat hard to visualize. So I did some Googling, and the Willis Tower is about 225,000 tons, give or take. That means that every day in the US, we generate about 7.25 Willis Towers worth of waste through the construction and demolition process. Of that, about 90% comes from demolition. So that's a lot of materials that have already been processed, that have been created, and that are already in the work stream or the built environment that are getting demolished every day. The EPA says that about 75% of the total waste was diverted, but the city of Chicago says it's about 85%. So yay, we're hitting our goal, 75%. We get some lead points. That's exciting. So why is it a problem? It's a problem because that's still a lot. 85% diversion is enough, but what's left over is still a lot. So what we want to talk about today is how to kind of change our basis. We've done really well at making recycling the base of our efforts in the construction industry. But now we need to focus on the reduce and the reuse components and kind of change that triangle so that we start with reduce and reuse. One of the ways that the industry is looking to do that is through third-party certifications. If you're familiar with the LEED rating system in version 4 and 4.1, introduce new metrics to look at total waste. So we're looking at pounds per square foot for total construction waste, which is a good start to shift the industry. If you were part of the V5 public commentary, you'll see more language about reuse starting to make an appearance, as well as deconstruction and salvage assessments. The other rating system that is looking at waste is TRUE. And TRUE has introduced a pilot program for construction that came out about 2021, 22. And that draws on their experience with the Zero Waste for Operations program and their Zero Waste Events certification programs. Similar to LEED, TRUE is a points-based system, and projects can select credits that align best with their project conditions. They have a number of categories that they use. So the options include things like reviewing the supply chain and designing out waste, creating a plan that emphasizes reuse. Are you composting? A lot about tracking and reporting and just maintaining that transparency. And then the minimum diversion requirement, and this is one of those minimum program requirements, is a 90% diversion rate. And so there's a lot of emphasis still on diversion, but also on how you prevent waste from getting to the site. So Turner had the opportunity to participate in one of the TRUE construction pilot projects. One of our projects on the West Coast received their pre-certification last year at Greenbuild. Pre-certification is an optional incremental pathway to certification, and it focuses primarily on the policies, plans, and programs that are in place throughout the construction process. This project is not complete yet. We will be completing construction next year. So that pre-certification process was looking at what would be in place throughout the construction project. So what are we doing? We are focused on diverting as much demolition waste as possible. There was a concrete structure that was demolished. During construction, our team worked with their curtain wall contractor, and they were able to implement reusable containers and packaging. So all deliveries came in reusable containers that they brought back and are able to use again and again. They also collaborated with the design team and their ceiling contractor and have optimized the grid layout for the ceiling tiles so that there are less cutoffs for the tiles. and they adjusted how waste was transported. So they have a dedicated person that moves waste around the project site, brings it down to the dumpsters, and then you can see the wood dumpster here where they separate out the waste. And so there was a big training component to make sure that the people dealing with the waste had the know-how and the knowledge and understanding of why waste was important. Additionally, they do regular waste audits. Once a month, somebody climbs in the dumpsters, digs through the trash cans, and does an audit of what is in each of the receptacles, and then how they can better their waste management process. So the big component coming out of that project, and our main takeaway, is that there's a lot about planning. If you plan for waste at the beginning, if you involve all the stakeholders or as many as you can make waste a priority, and you can hit these really high diversion rates. So with that, I am going to turn things over to John to talk about deconstruction and reuse.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, Twyla, for the introduction. So I'm John Millade, and I'm going to talk a little bit about deconstruction and how we can better reuse materials on site. I love stuff. I have got a big garage. It's filled with stuff. I am not a hoarder, but what my affinity really is for finding practical uses for old things. And so I'm the guy who drives down the road and, eyeing people's like garbage cans and things and make frequent stops. I should have a sticker on the back of the car. But I'll throw stuff in the back if it could be diverted and bring it home where it goes. I compile a bunch of stuff and then I take it places. And so there's like an informal network of like where to take stuff when you don't want it anymore, right? The question is, how do we scale that? How do we really get it so that industry, so construction projects are all on the same page and moving in the same direction and have that same zeal for diversion? One of the reasons, certainly now as we focus more on embodied carbon, is just the sheer impact of stuff. Lindsay, presented a few facts about the magnitude of the issue. They say that up to 30% of upfront embodied carbon is in the construction process, and that includes the waste. If we can start to divert things, deconstruct buildings, divert the materials, and reuse them, we're cutting down significantly on the waste that needs to be diverted. What you see here is kind of the stages or the phases or scope of LCA, of embodied carbon studies. So a lot of, when we talk about embodied carbon, frequently it's just that A1 to A3, which is the manufacturing of new products. The industry really hasn't done a very good job, and it's working on it. We're all working really hard towards it, but hasn't done a great job yet on really thinking about the whole life cycle of the materials. What's happening when they are being replaced? Can they be refurbished? Are we designing buildings for deconstruction? You can see that the kind of teal area over on the far right is titled circular economy. It's like, well, how do we account for all the materials once they're deconstructed and they're going back into new buildings? What does that mean for embodied carbon? What does that mean for the impact of these projects? How much savings or what reduction do we really have? And I think there's a huge opportunity there. Most of us deal with waste, like Lindsay mentioned, through reports like this one, where you haul stuff off site, it gets sorted, and you get a report back like this. All the materials diverted up front contribute to positive results in your reports. For the city of Chicago, when you have to divert waste, or for LEED, or for any other green building framework, when we're diverting that waste up front, you can account for that weight, you can account for that value, certainly when it's reused. Green Badger is one tool that we use on construction projects. And, we're able to input all of the stuff that's diverted. It could give us additional reports. And there's a number of different platforms and frameworks like this that you can use. And I scribbled out some names to protect the innocent here. But we just want to be able to track that impact. I was first introduced to, the process of how to go about this by working on living building challenge projects. I do a lot of work with ILFI now, but probably 10 or so years ago, we were working on a local project here in Chicagoland at University of Chicago. It's the Keller Center. And I was on the project team helping to spearhead the materials pedal, the red list vetting and that sort of thing. And part of that was really trying to understand what part of the building can we salvage, can we reuse? And in that project, there was extensive reuse of materials and use of salvage materials. And you'll see here on the screen that there's, this is the LBC requirements, and it's really the first place I believe has codified an approach to actually performing a deconstruction plan or a material salvage plan. And so we want to do it early, and we want to be able to integrate it into the specs and make sure that it's done in every project. Now, there's a lot of words on this slide, but what I just wanted to point out is that in addition to doing it early, you want to engage the architects, the contractor, all of the entities at hand. If you're working on a project that is part of a public agency, there's additional steps to take because they need to protect the perception of theft or of materials going into the wrong hands. Sometimes it's easier to throw things away. So there's hurdles there. That second paragraph there, salvageable materials such as carpet, cabinets, windows, appliances must be identified in the pre-building audit and diverted for reuse, recycling, or donation. And so it's really trying to take that notion of recycling to the next level. More often than not, you have to visit the site. You have to go there, you have to walk through it. You have to understand what the demo scope is, take all of your photos so you can document what the opportunities are. And so I've started doing that, on recent projects of ours at White & Company. I've gone out to the site, I've toured the site, taken photos, and I create these sheets like these. And, this is just snapshots of the first page, but with a high level description of the project, some bullet points of the types of materials that are available. And then I follow that up with a number of photographs. Each photograph has captions saying, how many of this or how many of that are available. So there's an inventory. And then I take these and I shop them around to different outlets throughout Chicagoland. And so depending on the material, there's a variety of places that we can take this. I think Stuart will mention some other opportunities around that. It doesn't work all the time. That building on the top left, that North Chicago school, it was just too far deteriorated. The contract pace was going too quickly. We weren't able to get in there and do what I would have liked to do. Again, it was limited opportunities. But on the bottom two, this assisted living center in Wheaton, the Park District ice skating rink, totally successful. And I'll show some photos of what we were able to reclaim. Hoffman Estates building is still in queue. And in fact, just yesterday, I put another one of these together. And so it's happening slowly. There's really no standardized way of doing this. If we talk to other construction companies and folks here in Chicago, you'll see different formats for this. There's no right way to do it. But the main things you want to convey is, what are you trying to donate? Can it be easily extracted from the building? Who's going to be extracting it? And then queuing everything up. So this is a receipt from that assisted living center. These materials went to Rebuilding Exchange. You'll see the photos along the left side. I mean, there's truckloads of stuff. And in this case, this was not part of the demo contract. But when presented with the opportunity, the demo contractor was like, wait, hang on, we just need to palletize the stuff here and somebody else is going to come take it down the stairs and get rid of it. We don't have to pay for the dumpsters. We don't have to pay for the labor to take it down. Done deal. And so it was really, in that case, really an easy process. I think there's other considerations depending on the contract configurations in the project, time frame as well as scale, that might impact that. But in this case, there's 1,200 ceiling tiles, over 50 doors. There's wood rails from the hallways and bathroom mirrors, all sorts of stuff. Could there have been more? Likely. Is this a great first step? Yes, I am so proud of the team. I'm proud that this has made it through and was actually a success. There's ways to monetize this as well. Now, if you're working with a pub or a privately owned building, There's massive tax deductions that can be had, or tax credits. These are two case studies that were provided by Recycling. Recycling's just north of the border in Wisconsin. And it really has a great model of providing um, kind of material audits or assessments where they can put a value on what it's going to be. Building owner or developer then knows what to expect as the materials are extracted and donated. And so it becomes more integrated in the process, and it's a great way then to involve the owner, and there's a monetary benefit there, as there should be. The projects that we've done to date have been public projects, and so we've, as I mentioned, we had to go through additional approval processes to donate the materials, but there's no credits to be had. I mean, our construction team is not claiming the credit. We're not claiming the credit for it. The village or the public entity can't claim the credit because they don't pay tax to begin with. But these private developers do have a huge opportunity with that. So how do we go about doing this internally? I mean, we're in a unique position, I think, as an integrated firm with both architecture and construction under one roof. And, we have an internal standard, a sustainability standard that we follow. And in that, I circled the passage here, but coordinating with our sustainability team on whether or not there's opportunities for deconstruction and salvage. So we can be assured that most of our projects are now going through that process. Where you donate matters. I don't want everything landing in my garage. There's a lot of outlets where you can take things and, students use them for art projects and that sort of thing, which is great. We need the kids to learn and grow and, be artistic and whatnot. But a lot of times a lot of organizations take these things and it's a speed bump to the landfill. What we want is the vision is for large scale deconstruction in Chicagoland, which also then helps the design side of things because you have got a better certainty of available materials over time for your projects. And so we want to get as many materials, whole building materials, not just little product samples and things, but large quantities of materials in the marketplace for reuse. So a few pro tips, observations of going through this process. You can see in the background, the photo is of the Rebuilding Exchange warehouse. So they just accept a whole bunch of stuff. People come through there, use it for whether it be small businesses or homeowners or commercial projects. Depends on the quantities here. But, it's never too early to start thinking about deconstruction. Once you ink the demo contract, it might be too late. Not always, as I, provided an example with that project in DuPage. A lot of demo contractors will assess the value of the materials that they're going to be extracting, and that is part of their business model. It becomes part of their fee. So if you have something under contract and then all of a sudden you extract all the valuable, materials out of it, then there might be a contractual issue because they were expecting that revenue stream. The earlier we can do this, the better. We want the design teams to understand what's in there. Can they reuse these materials? They need time to think about it, and they need to understand what the quantities are and that sort of thing. But donating it is just the first step. The real key for circular economy and really to reduce our impact is designing these materials back into the process to give them additional service life. So even if you're not in the space or have under the purview of deconstruction, if you're on the design side, start shopping out at all of our local resources. We need people buying these materials, putting them in new buildings so that as we provide more materials through deconstruction, they've got a viable prospect. Of course, the coordinating material deconstruction and the pickups, shifting project schedules, particularly if projects are phased and that sort of thing can get complicated, but something you just need to work through. And frankly, on the construction side, there's real professionals working on scheduling. Other limitations, storage is always an issue. Where are you going to put materials from when you deconstruct them to when you reuse them again? It's going to be different for every client and every single project, which is also why it's a little bit easier just to donate them. And then if you want to buy things back, the same products or otherwise, is a possibility. I mentioned the coordination as potential challenge. Right now, like we're in the early development of these markets. And so a lot of times the opportunities are more limited to finished materials and furnishings, but like we really want to think bigger. We've got a few examples in-house of, salvaging large metal structural steel members, or timbers are a good example. How far can we really push that scope to see what is possible? Frankly, the picture you see in the background is of the Downers Grove North High School. And for us in our work, we do a lot of building renovations, and it's frankly keeping the existing building is, and you can see this used to be a courtyard, so three sides of this thing were existing buildings. Keeping existing buildings is really the most sustainable move that we have, because we're basically salvaging or reusing that structure and that entire thing and giving it more life. It's really hard to quantify that impact, but it's a story that we'd really like to tell more. I mean, whether you're on the private or public side, always think about building reuse first. How can we extend the life of these materials that are already in place? I mentioned the city of Chicago. Lindsay was talking about recycling. Just as a quick example, as I conclude my comments here, is just, San Francisco has got a great program in place, both from the requirements around recycling, but importantly around reuse. And, the city has got partners with a number of organizations to really find best use of materials. And it's a level of integration that I don't think I've seen in many other places around the country. Something that we would love to aspire to here in Chicago, and that how can we work with the city? How can we work with each other as a community of designers and builders to really make it work? It's challenging to scale, no doubt, but it's possible. And I think over time, it's going to be increasingly necessary that we do so. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Stuart. One way or another. And my controls are missing.
Thank you, John.
Were you able to do it? Good.
I'm not able to share my screen just yet, waiting on those privileges. I think you have to, there you go.
Thank you.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Stuart Vandenhoevel. I'm a Senior Sustainability Program Manager at Repley. Repley is a Chicago-based tech company focused on reuse and circular economy. You could probably name tech companies in the world that are focused on reuse and circular economy on one hand. So we're very fortunate and grateful to be in Chicago. It's a wonderful city for it. We've got some great customers that are in the city that are really setting the example of internal and external reuse. So I'm excited to bring kind of the technology aspect to this conversation. Okay, so there were some numbers thrown around earlier, and not to rehash kind of the problem that we're all facing, but a different perspective on it. Circular economy's become a buzzword. I think recycling has become a blanket term. These are kind of systemic challenges that we're all working to fix. But there's a lot of talk around circular economy, but it is probably the most forgotten R of the three R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce is its own systemic thing that takes time. But everything is just kind of blanketed to be recycle, and not all recycling is the same. So even though there's a ton of discussion, 3 times the amount according to Circularity Gap 2024, it's actually dropped in activity. And this is overall industry, so not just the built environment, but from 2018 to 2023, it's actually dropped 21%. And that's significant. That's substantial drop. And Repley's out here to change that. And I know everyone on this call obviously has a belief system that they can change that too. So we need everyone. It's truly the most collaborative R of the three. So Repley, how do we think about circular economy? If we're a tech company focused on this area, how do we frame this up? How do we talk to customers about this? How do we talk to maybe businesses or companies that are a little hesitant or a little unfamiliar? The three main principles that we focus on, circular economy is eliminating waste and pollution, circulating products and materials at their highest value, and regenerating nature. We all know eliminating waste and pollution is, what if we think about all the negative consequences of a product before designing it, and then identify, alternative materials and manufacturing processes to completely avoid these negative consequences? This one really applies to greenhouse gases, polluting waterways, the accumulation of physical waste. The second principle, circulating products and materials, but at a high level, is focused on developing activities that preserve the value of materials. This includes the design of durable products that can live a really long life, as well as designing for reuse and disassembly, remanufacturing, and proper recycling. Lastly, regenerate nature is saying that we need to go farther than protecting our environment. We should improve it. Nature wastes nothing, as I'll get to a practical example of that in a slide or two. We shouldn't use non-renewable resources, and we should promote farming practices that return biological materials back to the earth and increase biodiversity, rather than deplete the land of its nutrients. We believe there's a fourth bonus principle, that the circular economy allows us to actually redefine what it means to live a meaningful life while consuming less and reutilizing more. So let's get practical. So this is a really fun example. This is going to look abstract, I believe. It's like 50-50 shot. Sometimes people have no clue what this is. And others are like, I know exactly what this is. But what you're looking at is a whale fall. So when a large whale falls in the ocean, nature literally wastes nothing of that. When large animals reach the end of their life in all aspects, their carbon-based nutrients provide food, shelter for vibrant ecosystem of new life forms for years to come. What if buildings actually behave the same way? What if our buildings had those carbon-based nutrients and release those into the local ecosystem? The building materials, the furniture, the fixtures, the equipment, this could create and sustain their own ecosystem locally and really fuel local economy and growth. There's a ton of jobs that can be created from the circular economy. And Europe is really showing us that that's not only feasible, but they're doing it. So this is, Repley's vision. We want to act as the signals, the biological signals that can, tell everyone within a 100-mile radius that, hey, there's an awesome building that unfortunately is coming down or it's being renovated, but there's, an opportunity to actually shop the materials from that building. And obviously storage is a question, and logistics are a question, but those are all things that we like to help with and solve. So how does Repley do this? Here's a visual. I'm a visual learner, so this helps me. Really getting everyone on the same page and early. John hit on that. Needs to be as soon as possible. If the demo subcontractor has already been inked and paid for, it's challenging because you have to kind of backtrack a little bit at that point. But if we can come in early, work with those demo contractors. I think John mentioned also that a lot of them are kind of doing deconstruction as well. It's just maybe not marketed on their website. Those folks know how to take down a building properly, and they know how to salvage, and they know what's valuable. So we love to work with them. One of the key things that Repley does, and you'll see on this diagram, is the term internal reusers. And we believe that the tightest circles that we can create, the tightest loops, the most carbon efficient are actually internal at the same company. So I'll get into an example of actually a Chicago school that's doing a wonderful job of this. But we believe that if we can look internal first, like that's step one. And then if we can't do that, let's cast a little bit wider net and get the cities and local governments, the nonprofits and external reusers, service providers aware and involved. And that's really our kind of method and approach. So this has been Reaply's straightforward. How does this happen? When do we do this? What does this look like? Being a tech company, it's easy to kind of have an ambiguous product. And I think some tech companies like that. But we're trying to really get detailed with, what does Reaply do? How do we help in this process? Where can your firm start? And this framework's actually inspired by NYC EDCs, so the Economic Development Corporation. They released a circular construction guidelines that were published in February. So this is hot off the press. We had some things on paper, but once they released that, we were included in some RFPs right away to help with some of those projects. And we really kind of firmed up our offering here. And this is really designed to meet you where you're at. If you want a lunch and learn, strategy support is the one to go with. If you, like John mentioned, need someone to go to the actual building, walk around and digitize all of the materials that are potentially reusable, that's something Reaply can do with also some subcontractors of ours. Management plans, would entail, really where is this waste going? Can we tell the story of like traceability rather than donating it and hoping that it's, going to be reused? We want to know what it's going to be reused for and who's receiving it specifically. And then telling those stories is a huge piece of that. The bottom three tiers are, activating the inventory with Reaply's product. We call it Circulate, very straightforward name. We take those, that audit that you have, we plug it into our system, and we present it to any stakeholders that need to be aware to hopefully do some internal reuse. But if nothing else, keep this out of landfill, keep it local. And then reuse assistance and demand network. This is really the magic behind the technology. This is really the people behind the technology. This is what the sustainability team at Reaply does every single day. The customer success team does every day. Finding the matchmaking and finding the right recipients, coordinating logistics if we need to, and getting scrappy, because as John mentioned, this is a nascent kind of industry and endeavor for a lot of firms. It may be their first time doing it on a project. And we have some recommendations on where to start, because if you go for like 40% reuse, you're likely going to be disappointed because it is hard. And this infrastructure is very new, and it's takes a lot of kind of manual effort. So we have a demand network of around 4,000 unique businesses, organizations, local governments, schools, remanufacturers are on here as well. We've been working more closely with the manufacturers themselves, specifically with ceiling tiles, flooring, and high-end furniture, office furniture. They have their own take-back programs a lot of times and infrastructure to kind of leverage as well. So everyone's on the table. Like, we want to keep it local. We only ship things if it's a full truck or if it's a full train car, but keeping it within a 150 to 200 mile radius is really the goal. In Chicagoland, there's about 150 unique businesses and nonprofits on the marketplace today. And really, that's how our public-facing product looks and feels. I think I have an addiction to Facebook Marketplace. It sounds like John may be undiagnosed, but I think I can maybe diagnose him here. it's good, right? It's peer-to-peer reuse, but Repley's focused on business to business and higher volumes. Cool. So here's the spotlight of the local champion, the reuse heroes that we call them. In just 6 months, Russian University had a large renovation project with the medical center, and they recaptured almost a $250,000 of value. What that means is they save procurement $250,000 by not buying new things because they already had them, they already owned them, and they were simply across the property. So very, very close circle. A quote from Katie Pittman, she's incredible over there. Really cost avoidance for internal reuse, making their lab more attractive and more efficient from a cost perspective. And there's a lot of external donations of things that they realized once we digitized it and we don't need it for internal, where is this going to go? Chicago Furniture Bank, they're a huge recipient from a lot of the furniture from Rush. So have to give them a shout out as well. Okay, so to recap here, 3 core functions of Repley's product and how we can help on your next project, summarized by we help you know what you have, we help you use what you have, and then we help you establish and choose that next best life. I do have to give a shout out to a shameless plug, really, for Repley's co-founder. Last fall, he gave a TED Talk on material reuse and would recommend. It's about 13 minutes. And, if you're not fired up already about, doing this and kind of being the first at maybe your firm to show initiative here, would recommend because it'll leave you pretty amped up. So I'll leave you with a challenge. I'd recommend starting small. I think if we can, come away with this and you look at your projects on the boards coming up and you find one that maybe has demolition involved, or maybe you want to do a better job of keeping surplus out of landfills because there maybe is an overage that is not going to kind of backstock. It's available as surplus. Find that one project, choose one material, a couple good ones to start. Gypsum, flooring, tile work, casework, doors, windows, FF&E are really what we consider to be low-hanging fruit because the infrastructure and the marketplace demand has already signaled to us that it exists and it's ready, especially for FF&E. There's a lot of people doing that and making a living off of recirculating, refurbishing, remanufacturing, and reselling those assets. Keeping it local, that's, really if you're abiding by circular economy principles, shipping things long distances, storing things for long periods of time are really not recommended. It's very rarely does it make carbon sense to do either of those. And being in a big city, storage is at a premium, hard to come by. Luckily, there are storage providers that are looking for business and they want people to use their space, and they're on Repley. And then lastly, share your story. I think in this, where we're at in the industry is sharing the challenges, so others can kind of learn quickly and not run into those same challenges themselves. That's huge. I think it's great to pat ourselves on the back every once in a while and celebrate what we did. But there's what we've learned way more challenges than successes. So definitely be transparent and be honest about those. That is it for me. If you want to scan this, it'll bring you to a sign up page and you can create a free profile and start browsing the hundreds of thousands of pounds of building materials and FF&E in Chicagoland. I will pass it over to, let's see, Lindsay. No, not Lindsay. Chelsea. No. I've lost my person.
No, it's we'll just go into Q&A. But yeah, I want to thank all of the panelists. I think that the scale of waste in the United States and the world, it can feel very overwhelming. So it's great to hear about some of these real best practice, these stories where we were able to address it. And we do have some questions that have come in, so I'll start with those. The first from an anonymous attendee is, are the three panelists today working together on local reuse or just deconstruction projects in Illinois?
Terrific question. You know, there's a group of contractors here in Chicago, the Sustainable Construction Leaders, that do coordinate and kind of vision around the possibility. Lindsay and I are separate construction companies. And so we share ideas. I think that's the collaboration, is the ideation and understanding what the resources and what's possible. And certainly at White, you know, we've had the conversations with Reapley and are looking for the opportunity to engage them.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that one, on local, any other local projects?
I think that,
Okay.
yeah.
Covers it. Yeah. Okay. So the next one is for Stuart, from Alexi B. Do you see potential in digital twins to help with circular design?
Definitely. Yeah, digital twins, there's some really cool companies working on creating digital twins. I think that is in essence what we try to do with the circularity audits. If we were given you know, a spreadsheet of materials with photos to match, you know, we put that into more of a usable format that can be shopped internally by designers, and also, you know, posted via a marketplace. So I think digital twins is a necessity, and I think digital product passports is as well. Not to get too nerdy, but associating it to blockchain, I think eventually we'll be ready for that.
Okay. The next question is from Jessica Haverstock. Could you all talk more about how you've incorporated reused structural materials and where you found those materials from, if they are not from the existing site?
Don, do you have any experience with structural?
Yeah, there's a few steps in the process there if you are to do that, in order to maintain the integrity and be certain of the integrity of those members. A lot of the stuff that we are reusing are in existing buildings that we're reusing in place, right? And so we're able to leverage, you know, the existing building, keeping the existing building and renovating it. There's instances, and certainly great examples in Chicago, where timbers are salvaged and used for, if I say lesser structural applications, or used for, you know, if they're used for other applications within a space, you know, whether it be benches and other things. Now, that's not the highest use of a good timber. But again, this industry is growing, and it's trying to understand what's possible. We have not yet successfully taken, say, steel members from one site and used them on another site. But that's something that we are looking at, you know, and we'd like to be able to get there.
Yeah, similar. We're investigating what it would take to reuse structural members, what kind of testing and sort of recertification would have to happen. A lot of our reuse has been more in finished materials.
Okay. And there's sort of a somewhat related question here from Olivia Paxson. It says, what are your recommendations for structural engineers? Do you have any?
I mean, design for deconstruction would be a component of it. Look at ways that, was it bolts instead of welding, just ways that structure could be taken apart, or that the members could be reused without damaging them, would be a big thing.
Yeah, you have to remember that for structure, you know, the building life might be 40, 60, 80, hopefully longer years. Commercial interiors are churning constantly, right? That over the life of the project, the interiors may actually have an equivalent impact as the structure itself. And so right now, you know, a lot of structural engineers, it's hard to fathom where we're going to be in our sophistication 80 years out from now. Lindsay's absolutely right. Design for deconstruction, bolt instead of weld, and that sort of thing certainly helps. Understanding this, if you are taking a building down, do the pre-demolition evaluation. You know, send a structural engineer in to understand if there are members that can be reused. Can they be reused in the new building so that they don't have to be transported? And I think you can probably get over a lot of hurdles just by using them on the same site.
Great. And then this question from Sean Moran is for Lindsay and John. Are you writing waste diversion requirements into subcontracts?
Yeah. I mean, the contract is, you know, that's your binding document. So yes, we're putting diversion requirements into subcontracts beyond just like the waste haulers. Specific, you know, if you're taking any waste out of the site, we want the information. Here's what to do with it. Wanting to know about any kind of minimization or waste avoidance. Yeah, our waste management plan is part of the contract exhibits.
We also have waste management plans on each project. For the subcontracts is generally just with the hauler. I don't think we have language in there for any specific trade that they have meet a certain target. Most of our project sites have commingled waste that's then sorted at a local MRF by our hauling waste partner.
Great. And I have another question for Stuart. Do you have selling points that you can provide to different disciplines in architecture, engineering, construction, so they can encourage clients to go down that route? I.e., what is the business case from an architecture standpoint, interior design, contractor, etc.?
Yeah, so John, go for it, John. I was just going to say you kind of hit on the tax incentives for private owners and developers. I think that is the biggest thing. And, you know, working with companies like Recycling, they're in Chicagoland, they're fantastic, do a super high quality job, and they're experts at the tax incentive piece of this. As far as designers, you know, if you're going for living building challenge, you know, there's significant embodied carbon that you can save by, you know, reusing interiors. You know, if you have projects that are regionally, you know, happening, you know, what a dream it would be to like take materials from one and plug them into another. That would be like a fantastic story to tell. And unfortunately, like, I do think that the storytelling bit is significant. Like it's a value prop at this point, because everyone's trying to learn from others at this point, and it goes a long way for your firm's kind of brand recognition. And I mean, Turner's a great example of this.
Yeah, my recommendation would be don't be afraid. You know, I think from a design standpoint, like start with a small project, you know, don't bite off too much that it's gonna, you know, totally or derail the whole process. Start with a small project, go out to, you know, there's the brick reuse yards or some of these like building exchange type of places where they have warehouses filled with items. You know, are there things there that intrigue you? There's something, you know, like the wabi-sabi of design that we need to embrace. Like perfection is not the goal. There's nothing in nature that is absolutely perfect. You know, you've got apples with holes in them. That's good. Tomatoes that sometimes are ugly, they still taste great. And, you know, our society has been, you know, it's kind of molded into this thing where everything has to be so homogenous and exactly the same. And it's simply not true. You know, and we need to, it's a cultural shift. And I think from a design standpoint, we need to embrace that. And you can do that just by starting small. Take the first step. And then you'll eventually get comfortable with it and be able to do more once you understand the lay of the land.
Here's another interesting question. Have you automated waste management data capture, or is it still primarily manual entry or input?
Automated is hard to, it means something for you know, kind of everybody. We do have a platform across Turner, so I can get in and I can see all 400 some odd projects that are tracking, but it still, somebody has to type the information in. So is it fully automated? I would say no, but it is digital. And we are able to see and track and kind of do an enterprise view of our entire waste footprint.
Yeah, and our construction operation is minuscule relative to Turner. And so from an automated perspective, I get reports on individual projects as well as a compilation of all of our projects, which are really all around here in Northern Illinois. And there's not a whole lot of them. So it's pretty, there's not as great of a need as there is for Lindsay.
Great. And there's one more question here. Do you have any recommendations for resources guides to design for structural deconstruction? And I might also ask you to answer that more generally, if there's like one place that you would recommend people start, like whether it's lead guidance or true, or maybe it's something else entirely. If they're just looking to get more educated, where should they go?
Yeah, and this is for I imagine that this question is for the actual nuts and bolts of what do I need to do? What are the tactics, right? I would start with the Google machine, and you'll probably find a whole lot of resources. I know that there's been intention, and at times even within our firm, where just designing to, like if something comes in a 4x8 sheet,
Yeah.
why are we designing walls that are like some weird fraction of that? And I know it's very complicated with building program and everything else. But like the more that we can use all of the materials that we bring to the site and not generate waste to begin with, the better.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, I think there are a host of resources, and certainly the Living Building Challenge standard itself also provides resources to that end.
Okay,
As
great.
does the lead reference guide and other frameworks. I mean, just look at the resources and you'll find a lot.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think those are all of our questions. I want to thank the panelists. I think this was a really interesting discussion. I know I learned a couple things. So appreciate everybody's time.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. And for all of our viewers, we're going to put the link to the feedback survey in the chat one last time. If you have a second to fill out a quick feedback survey, we would love to hear your thoughts on the presentation. And you'll all have a follow-up email with a recording of this session and some information about reporting AIA and LEED. So thank you again, everyone. And I will get that link in the chat.
Can I jump in real quick? I'm seeing a lot of action on the chat about reuse and design for deconstruction. So for the folks who are asking those questions, there's a lot more information there as well.
Great. And then, yeah, again, anyone who wants to get AIA credit, fill out that form in the next 10 days to be reported. Thanks, everyone, and I hope you all have a great day.
Bye.